Wes Goldberg, welcome back. You're looking refreshed. You missed All-Star Weekend having to watch that abomination live, which is I think you're the biggest winner of All-Star Weekend, I think, for that. But we're going to start with a little cold open today and with some NBA broadcasting news. So two bits of news have trickled out this week. One is not really pertinent to this question, but Noah Eagle is going to be part of NBC's plans. I think that made a ton of sense. I think he'll be really good. Hopefully get the him and Dwayne Wade thing. That's like really just what I want on Peacock. Two, Richard Jefferson, per some reporting, is going to be on the finals broadcast. He's going to be on the number one team for the stretch run of this year on ESPN and ABC. How do you feel about Richard Jefferson, the broadcaster, getting this elevation, notably per the reporting, heading into free agency after the season?
Yeah, I think what the NBA, I like some of the personalities that the NBA has sort of stumbled on and its broadcast partners has stumbled on here in terms of, Richard Jefferson at least makes sense. I think he's really smart. He's one of these guys who I feel like isn't highlighted a ton at ESPN and is about to get that exposure here a little bit. There is a little bit of a JJ Redick void there since he left. I thought JJ Redick was a good announcer, not a great one. Better podcaster than he was like a color guy. I think Richard Jefferson is probably a better color guy than JJ Redick was. There's just a little bit more personality and a little bit more of an engagement on Richard Jefferson's side in terms of wanting to interact with the broadcast booth and not just always trying to get off his points and things like that. Again, I think those are the things that made Redick a really good podcaster and just maybe an above average to good broadcast guy. But when you look at NBC and the unit that they're putting together, I think they're taking it very seriously. I think they're picking the right names. And then you look at what Amazon is doing too, and you've got like a slew of options there as well. And I think the big news on Amazon was that they're going to pick up Dirk Nowitzki as a studio guy, and I think he's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Dirk. Very excited for Dirk.
So we're getting some interesting new voices, and of course you've got the Inside the NBA crew coming over to ESPN too. So you've got the old voices, that familiarity, and everything that goes with it. So I'm excited to see it, but I'm glad that Noah Eagle is getting a chance here. I'm glad that Richard Jefferson is being propped up. I'm glad that Doris Burke is still part of the broadcast.
Yes,
and I'm interested. And like you, Dirk Nowitzki, I think is going to be very good on Amazon. And like you, I think Dwayne Wade would be a slam dunk. And they also have Carmelo Anthony too over at NBC.
And Jamal Crawford, who I think has been really good.
He's really good.
You've seen him on television. The Richard Jefferson thing has always felt like this is where he was going to end up, because when he was in Cleveland, him and Channing Frye, along with Allie Clifton, who's now with the Lakers, was then the Cavs sideline reporter, were really at the forefront of this era of sports player podcasting. 100%. Road Trippin' is like that era of Road Trippin' before I think JJ took the mantle and made it, frankly, just a bigger business out of it with Old Man and the Three. That was the player podcast. Like it had, I mean, it's probably most famous for the Kyrie Irving stuff, but having those guys just shooting the shit during that era of a LeBron team and everything was astounding. I mean, when Richard Jefferson got waived or cut or whatever, how it happened when he left the Cavs, I think when Wade got here, there was there's a Homage shout out. I was gonna be like, I have to explain Homage, but people know Homage. We're gonna have an ad read for them later. They did like a pop-up podcast at a location that is now closed in a Cleveland suburb. And it was like the streets were full of people like getting in there. It was like a big thing. I don't know where it like falls in the zeitgeist now as far as like a podcast people are tuning into all the time, but it was like at the forefront of this era of new media that we're in. I think he's also just really good on television. I thought my favorite broadcasting trio last year was Ryan Ruocco, JJ, and Richard Jefferson. That was like my favorite. Like I knew I was going to learn something when I listened to those guys. Richard knows ball. He's funny. He's willing to be himself. He doesn't work himself into takes that he doesn't really need to have, which is like half the battle I have with this. He's also not grumpy about the product, and there's a place to be grumpy about the game. And I do think into the Intel they made guys on ESPN next year will be like them having not having that soft, delicate hand around the league. I think will be a good thing for what we're going to get on ESPN next year. But having a guy who's going to be at the finals who is really nerdy but is willing to have fun, alongside Breen, who's the best of the best, alongside Doris, who I adore, like I think that's a really good trio. And I just also think if you're playing out like where he might be next year, they're probably not giving him this spot unless they're pretty confident they're keeping him, because they wouldn't just platform him and then be like, all right, now you're going to go to Amazon and like you're already a name as much as any of these guys can be a name, but like we're not going to let you just go at that point.
Or he's so good that he gets priced out and then ESPN is forced to let him go. So this is a great deal for Richard Jefferson, really no matter what. But you're exactly right. And I think the point you just made is a really good one, and it's worth underlining where, okay, you've got the guys, the grumpy old men, the get off my lawn guys. You've got like in the what's the Muppets, the two guys on the balcony who just like argue all the time.
Yeah, I can't remember the names.
That's inside the NBA.
Yeah, but that's them. Yes,
that's inside the NBA. But Doris Burke and Richard Jefferson, what they have in common is an admiration and a love for the product, no matter the shape or the size of it. Right? They're just excited to be there. You could tell Doris Burke is legitimately just excited to have her job, which is awesome. That's the way those people should feel, because it's an awesome job. It's a sick job. Yeah. And I think Richard Jefferson is kind of like that too. He's going to be critical, as is Doris Burke. But I think they come at it from less of an entertainment standpoint and more from a journalistic standpoint, right? Like I think you've got the inside the NBA crew. They're winning Emmys, not Pulitzers.
No.
But I think Burke, Breen, and Jefferson kind of take more of a journalistic approach to it. And I mean that in the best way possible, where they're sort of just observing, taking it in, and then kind of reframing it and explaining it to the audience. And I think that's a good combo. I don't think Inside the NBA would work as a play-by-play broadcast booth. I also don't think Mike Breen, Doris Burke, and Richard Jefferson would work as a studio show.
Yes.
And I think Richard Jefferson is okay on the studio shows.
He's better on games.
He's way better at games. And I think so they kind of stumbled into the right combo here, as long as Jefferson stays. Because if he leaves, who knows who the next NBA media star might be, and maybe they could pluck somebody from another network. But
I don't know who it is. I think have to keep him at this point. And he's been to just maybe emphasize the point that this is where he's always kind of been going. The Cavs wanted to hire him when he retired to come back and do games. Because there's a real play-by-play. There's like probably a really good media story to be written about like what teams, like the challenge of finding really good local color guys in where people don't want to live in
play-by-play guys.
And play-by-play guys, yeah. He just, I don't think, wanted to live in Cleveland or to Channing Frye. And like, if you're them, I get it. You know, it's like that you have to live in the city most of the year to do that job. And it's like, if you want to A, make more money, and B, have this, like, you're going to go work for ESPN. You're going to go do your own show out of LA. Like, you're just going to do that thing. You can always like find one of those jobs if you really want it. So if they don't keep him, I don't even know who on their bench I would be like, that's the guy I'm tapping. That's the real challenge. All right, on today's show, we're going to play a game of catch up with Wes. We're going to list some things that happened while he was gone, and he's going to tell us what he thinks matters most. Diana Taurasi retires, and are the Knicks actually contenders? I don't think so. I think I'm just kind of out on them as a real contender. We'll get into it all on a new episode of the Just Basketball Show. Let's freaking go, man. We're so back. What is up, everyone? Chris Manning, Wes Goldberg, the Just Basketball Show, here with you on this late February midweek day. If you haven't already, subscribe, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. Hit subscribe on YouTube. Hit that notification bell. All of that and more. Please support the show. 5-star reviews only. And we are powered by BetMGM.
That's right. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android. Sign up using the code JUSTBASKETBALL. Deposit at least $10. Place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use the bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply.
Wes, let's dive in. Diana Taurasi is where we're going to start today because she has announced her retirement. This came out via a story, an interview with Time Magazine that people can go find pretty easily. Just a quick Google search. I think a lot, Wes, will be written and said, maybe more, eloquent than we are going to do here. But to me, this is when I think about like the 10 people in my basketball life that I think have shaped my love of the game. I think Taurasi is on that list for me. I think she's there because she was my intro to her and Bird, but I think her more than anyone else were my introduction to how awesome the women's game is. As a teenage boy, as someone in college, like watching more and more basketball as much as I could. That is an absolute killer of a competitor. That was ruthless until, she decided to retire right now. Represented the Team USA at the highest level when you get into that in the summer. And I found the more I learned about her and her, her career, and you think about like the different eras she straddled, I think it's just like a fascinating basketball life that you can't help but find until like compelling. I mean, one of the best sports feature stories I've ever read was a story about how her playing in Russia. I read this came out like I want to say like 2014, 15. I remember I read it for in this like study class I did on sports writing in college or nonfiction writing in college. This is someone who had to play overseas in Russia and Turkey to like make the most money she could because that wasn't what was offered here in America at the time. And she's still around as Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers and Angel Reese, and this next generation of young stars are coming up to carry her mantle forward. This is one of the most important basketball people that we've had in the last 25 years. I don't think there's anywhere. And to me, this is one of the people that I think when I think about how did I get into this game, how did I fall in love with this game, she's absolutely on that list for me.
And the winning, right? I mean, all of this you said is true, but the winning just spanned so long. I mean, it literally spanned almost 3 decades. I mean, when she started at UConn in 2000, 2001, she was winning championships, 3 championships in college, 3 championships in the WNBA, multiple MVPs, multiple All-Stars, the Olympics. It's everything that she's done. She's won at every single level, and she carried herself in a way that I think exuded so much confidence. I'm using the past tense. She's retired, not dead. She carries herself in a way that exudes so much confidence that I think was also very like. You talk to NBA players and you talk about like what Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant and these guys meant to them in terms of just attitude. And it feels like Diana Taurasi has a very similar impact, not on just the women's game, but on the men's game too. When you talk to people and you think about Taurasi, the first thing that they say is, "Oh, she's a winner." And obviously the decorations and the resume and all of that prove that she's a winner, but it was also how she carried herself. And that confidence. And I think that inspired the people around her and inspired the next generation and inspired this generation that we're seeing now.
You just when I read the Time story and you read about the winning is right because like this is reductive and not like a perfect analogy because none of these things are, but this is like something of a if you think about just the competitiveness, this is like the WNBA's version of Kobe in a lot of ways, just like the serial addiction to competition, right? Like the last quote in this Time story is, she says, "I'm definitely retired. I'm going to miss the competition. I'm going to miss trying to get better every single offseason. I'm going to miss the bus ride shoot-arounds. I'm going to miss the inside jokes. I'm going to miss the locker room, the things that come with being on a basketball team. All those things I'll deeply miss." She played till she was 42, like well past her physical prime. She's done everything she could. This is just someone who is addicted to this, for lack of a better word. You don't get a lot of people like this, right? Like you and I know this covering the league, talking to teams, talking to players. It's like rare when someone carries themselves like this, that has this dedication. And like we have to, I think, like we can go too far, I think, in lauding people for like that attitude at times and like where that puts them on how actually good they are. But there's something incredibly admirable about someone who has this "fuck you, I'm gonna win" attitude that like I think at times we have to recognize them more in the moment of how damn special that is.
And it's attractive, right? It's why we are attracted to Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and Diana Taurasi and Tiger Woods and Kevin Garnett. Like these guys who just are sickos about winning and the competition of it all. Because you're right, it is so rare. that we don't find it among NBA players, let alone our
It's-
peers. Like,
I mean,
do you know anybody at work?
No,
that
no,
is just like,
no. I would think
I love the commute. I love everything about it. Like, I can't wait to open up my emails and look at what's going on in Slack.
Just
like,
love to make love to just grind pivot tables. Like if Bob next to me at my desk was like, I'm gonna lock in and do. It's like there's that guy that like Davis Clark guy. I don't know. This is how rotted my brain is, but that guy who went viral on Instagram for just being like every day he would like document like his grind set. This was like a guy. He like went. Okay, my Instagram is fucked. What I'm learning. So this is good for you that you don't know who this is. But that's the guy, and he became like a meme because like that thing doesn't exist in real life. But that he felt like a caricature. It only exists in sports, and it's like when you think about people, if you think about like these GOAT debates, it's why people ding LeBron because he doesn't always like have that killer. He does more than people think, but people ding him.
He doesn't carry himself that way, and he doesn't have that sort of aura the way that MJ or Taurasi or Kobe did.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I would push back on you to say that it doesn't exist anywhere else in sports. It exists in the business world.
Well, it exists,
and it's why you see like Shark Tank, for instance.
Sure.
It's such a popular show because all those people on that panel carry themselves the way that in business, the way that Kobe did and Taurasi did on the basketball court. People are just attracted to that type of personality. It doesn't make that personality better or worse. It's just unique and it's attractive, and we're just drawn to it. And to bring it back to the WNBA, it's why Caitlin Clark stands out.
Nailed it.
In such a huge way.
Yeah. She is, I think, in some ways like the torchbearer for this. Like the fuck you Caitlin Clark attitude is there. And
you can't take your eyes off of that kind of stuff, right?
It's amazing. Yeah, you can't.
Anthony Edwards in the NBA. I mean, you can't take your eyes off these new players. It's a really and by the way, I'm a sucker for it too, man. I love those guys. I love those MFers. I'm a sucker for every player that carries himself in that way, deserving or not.
Yeah.
Deserving or not. I love that.
Yeah, because it says something about a person, and they're almost like when they're that authentic, they let you in and it tells you kind of what they're about in a way we don't always get. Shout out to Taurasi. What a career. I will link the New York Times story in our show notes so people can go and check that out. It is frankly one of the, if I'm just,
you're talking about the New York, the Russia story was in the New York Times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, to me, when I think of like great sports profiles and the kind we don't get as much anymore, I think of that and like the Wright Thompson, Michael Jordan one as like the essential basketball stories. Michael Jordan.
Don't even get me started. We can do a whole show on essential sports features and where they all went.
You and I are gonna, Wes, inevitably you and I link up and have several beers in a shitty bar somewhere. That is what we're gonna talk about for like 10 hours.
Let's do it. Let's make it Cleveland.
Brother, I got a bar we could walk to from where I'm sitting right now that we can get a Miller High Life for like $4. Okay?
Well, what?
Let's go. Yeah.
That's crazy. It's like half the price of a Miller High Life in Miami.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful place. Shout out to Johnny's. All right, Wes, what you missed? I got a couple things here, and you can tell me if there's something that you feel like I missed on my list of things you missed. We've got Joel Embiid and the surrounding mystery.
Just for the record, it's going to be hard to tell you what I missed since I missed it.
Yeah, but here's
so I'm
the thing.
really relying on you to tell me what I missed here.
You're also a sicko who just like catches up on all of these things in a way. Like I'm just like but these are the things I thought mattered most. I kept a list while you were gone, and here's like the three things I thought really mattered the most. So we have Joel Embiid's knee and whatever the fuck is going on there, and like the continuing reports of they're looking at things. It could be surgery that keeps him out 6 months to a year, as the Sixers are just continuing to be a dumpster fire. You have All-Star Weekend being utter nonsense, and there's some new reporting now about what All-Star Weekend might look like next year. So there's that. And then Victor Wembanyama out for the season, blood clot. Spurs we're kind of on the outside looking in already, but after the Fox trade, he thought maybe they make a run. He's done. Those I feel like are the big things. In addition to maybe Jimmy Butler and the Warriors being off to a great start. Some games here or there, but during that run, though, the Wemby news, the Embiid situation, and All-Star Weekend, those feel like the big three things that we might have done episodes about. So what should those to you speaks to you? What speaks to you there?
So let's backtrack just a couple of steps here. So I was out all of last week. I was in Colombia for a couple of different reasons. My wife's family is from there. We also had a wedding in Medellin. So we decided to go to my wife's home town part of Colombia, spent a few days there, then took a 50-minute plane ride to Medellin, spent 3 days there, beautiful wedding. Congrats to the couple, and then came back on Sunday. So I was out from Saturday to Sunday. And right before I got on the plane on Saturday, leaving out of Miami International, I deleted my Twitter app.
Good. You know what? Good for you. This is great. I love this for you. Good job, Wes.
I tell you this story to tell you that the only thing that made me download the Twitter app while I was away was the Victor Wembanyama news.
Oh, see, I would have just. You have the Reddit app on your phone? That's what I've been doing.
I do, but I don't use it enough to know how to work it as well. I know how to work Twitter, so I just downloaded the Twitter app while I'm sitting by the pool at the hotel, and had to catch up on this. That is by far the most important news. The fact that Joel Embiid is still injured, but in a new mysterious way. Joel Embiid holds the record for finding new ways to get hurt, but he's always just hurt.
Yeah.
So it's starting to matter. Each new injury matters less and less with Joel Embiid. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, he's hurt again? Yeah. Okay. I don't really care what leg it is or what face he has broken or what shoulder it is. Or I don't really care anymore. It doesn't matter. I'm not tracking it. I just know that it's another thing and he's hurt and he's probably always going to be hurt. So it's starting to matter less. It's almost the opposite for Victor Wembanyama, who's had a clean bill of health up until this point. And then you've got this kind of injury. Condition. It's more of a condition.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's like a medical issue more than it. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, which is the thing that ended Chris Bosh's career in 2016. It's the thing that I think people were fearful about Brandon Ingram and his.
Yes.
And when he had the deep vein thrombosis and he was able miraculously to come back from it. Fortunately for Victor Wembanyama, unlike Chris Bosh's blood clot was in his lungs. For Wembanyama, it's in his shoulder, and so it's. Lungs, shoulder, that seems less severe at the risk of playing amateur doctor here. But it is easily the most important thing that happened while I was away because now this is a thing. Victor Wembanyama was a blue chip, 100% home run prospect, the guy that was going to define the league for the next decade, open up another Spurs championship window. And all of that stuff that seemed like such a sure thing, at the risk of being too dramatic, Chris, it's just not as sure of a thing anymore because we just don't know how this is going to play out. When you are that size, it just, again, at the risk of being an amateur doctor, it just takes longer for blood to flow through your body. You have more space, more surface area, more room for stuff to go wrong with your body, right? We've seen this with big guys time after time. Heck, we've seen it with Joel Embiid. You hate to see something like this happen for Victor Wembanyama. Now, all the reports and everything out of San Antonio is expressing optimism, and we all hope that he makes a full recovery and this is just a blip on the radar. But it makes you at least wonder, right? You can't be this is 100% a sure thing anymore. And just going from 100% to 99%, that makes this the most important thing that happened while I was away.
It's scary. I think that to me is the easiest way to think about it, right? You look at the list of guys, NBA.com did the story about kind of an explainer, and it's Christian Coloco, who lost a whole season to this. Oscar Thompson did not finish, and he missed some games to start the year with this, and it was very, it felt like very vague what was going on with him for a while. Anderson Varejao missed half a season after he had quad surgery, and he got put on blood thinners, then he came back the next year. By all accounts, he's fine now. Brandon Ingram, as you said, had this, and as you know better than anyone, Chris Bosh had his career cut short. At 32, which is younger than I remembered, frankly, with Bosh. A lot of basketball there left to be played.
Yeah.
I think if I'm looking at this, trying to be practical about it, and you don't want to go too far. It does create some doubt. Where my head goes is thinking about, okay, what do you lose because he's out the rest of the year? That is initially just where my brain went, because until they come out and say, by comparison with the other thing going on with him, Greg Popovich's future as an NBA head coach is very much up in the air. I think we knew his career was coming to an end because of the stroke. He's not going to come back this year. It seems, I would guess just based on the reporting, I don't think he might never coach again. I think that's where we're at with Pop. So there you have that. You think about not having Wembanyama just after you got Fox, barely any games together between him, Castle, and Fox. there's something to be said if you could, even if you didn't make the 10 seed and get in the play-in this year, if you finished 11th, the foundation you could have laid this year is something lost for them when you think about them for next year. If he's back fine next year, and maybe misses start of the year or something, like worst case scenario, if that's the worst case, you can overcome that and it'll ultimately be fine, and this will just be like a weird blip in his career. In the short term, the thing that it does is halts any Spurs momentum, because like just because of what he is, you take that you can't replace that guy and just say, okay, we can run these same sets and have the same defensive structure and operate the same way. Like, he's on that list of guys and at the top of the list of the young guys that you take him out, nothing you do can look the same because he's not there. Like whatever center minute you're going to fill with him gone, it's never going to work the same. Nothing you do can build the same way, and the chemistry now can't build. Like, what that means for them next season, if we're looking at this practically, Wes, I think that would be the thing. It's like, okay, I might think of them a little bit lower next year just because that baseline, that building block of the rest of the season, it's off the table now for them.
Yeah. No, because you think about like the life cycle of young NBA teams, you kind of want to see them in the first round of the playoffs, get eliminated in 5 or 6 games. But you're like, all right, I saw it. And now you can kind of picture it, and then they can learn from it. And Victor Wembanyama is like, he's like a young musician that has just sold out every small venue and is just ready to see if he could fill a stadium. Right? Like, we know what Victor Wembanyama can do in the regular season. Like, there are no more questions. Like, there's still room for him to grow. Like, he could still get better. But we kind of know he's already a top 10 player in the regular season. I want to see what he's going to do in the playoffs. Now, he is a little bit different than other young players who we kind of feel like we need to see in the playoffs, just because we've seen Victor Wembanyama play at a high level in the Olympics as recently as this past summer. And he just has that killer instinct. And to your point, Chris, he's one of one in so many ways that he's going to always impact the game. But like, there's no doubt about that. But you still want to see it. And so the fact that you don't see it, you are losing a year. Right? Like, and I know that everybody's, well, he's young, it doesn't really count. Like, no, it counts. This guy is one of the best players in the league right now. De'Aaron Fox has been in the playoffs. The Spurs aren't contenders, but this year still mattered. And I think making the playoffs would matter, and building more chemistry with De'Aaron Fox would matter. And all of this, and Chris Paul isn't getting any younger. And I know he's not essential to this team, but he kind of still feels essential to this team.
Yeah,
so,
he does.
I don't know. You are kind of losing a year here. It sucks. But at the same time, they should be fine. Give me a training camp with them. There's still some questions to your point about who's going to be coaching this team, but give me a training camp. Maybe make some other moves in the summer. I think this team could potentially be a contender as soon as next season, right? But it just would have been nice to see the proof of concept a little bit with Wembanyama in the playoffs.
The other thing that I hit on this in a solo video, but I want to ask your take on this as well, is it opens up the Defensive Player of the Year race.
Yeah,
there's going to be these, because he's now ineligible. He wasn't going to play enough games. I was asking some friends about this, Wes, and I got mixed reactions on who they would take. The funniest answer I got was, Adam Silver, don't be a coward, just give it to Wembanyama anyway. And like, I honestly, like, you wouldn't hate that. The odds on this from our friends at BetMGM are interesting, because they've shifted little bits, like on micro levels here and there. Over this has happened. It opened up pretty even between Jaren Jackson Jr. and Evan Mobley. Those are clearly the two favorites. Jackson a couple days ago was at minus money, slight favorite. Now him and Mobley are both at plus money. Jackson is at plus 120. Mobley's at plus 130. This is a rematch of sorts of when they were two of the leading candidates a couple years ago and Jaren Jackson won. These teams played the other night. Mobley played a much better defensive game, I thought, and also just did not get in foul trouble in that game for whatever that head-to-head is worth. And there's very little, but it was just the anecdote that comes to my head. That's the race now. It is Jaren Jackson Jr. getting a second one or Evan Mobley getting his first. If you were handicapping this, Wes, think about who do you think has the window now to get this award because Wemby is out of the picture, who do you favor there?
This is a great question. So, I don't think it can be Jaren Jackson Jr. I think the Grizzlies are awesome. I love the Grizzlies. I love Jaren Jackson Jr. What he's done offensively this year in terms of that leap has been awesome. But he's not the same defender. He's not defending at the same level he did when he won Defensive Player of the Year, and that's the bar now. And so I don't know. I don't think of Jaren Jackson Jr. as the best defender in the league. And to your point, I think Evan Mobley has just been better than him this year. Yeah. So between those two, I would go Mobley. But I would open it up to wings too here. I think this is wide open. You look at the Thunder. They are with a bullet the best defensive rating in the league.
And
they're holding opponents to 105 points per 100 possessions. The next best team is Orlando at 3.3 points more per 100 possessions. Like, it kind of feels like we have to give it to somebody on Oklahoma City, but then it gets like really weird with the Thunder, because if you go with like who leads the team in steals, it would be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm like, he doesn't feel like he's the best defender.
Well,
in the league,
and it's
right?
like he's getting the MVP. If you look at like the odds on that right now, it just like feels like barring something shifting, and there still is a lot of basketball left. But MGM,
he's the favorite.
He is minus 550 right now. Jokic is at plus 350. Giannis is third at plus 12,500. So like it is like technically a two-man race, and really a one guy is a massive lead.
And so then you look on the on-off numbers in Oklahoma City, and Caruso, Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein, these guys lead the team in some of the on-off stuff. And with Caruso, he just doesn't play enough minutes. Holmgren's been I don't think even Holmgren's going to be eligible for these awards. Hartenstein, again, doesn't feel like he's the best defender on that team, although he's big, and cleans up the defensive glass and has been really important for them. I look at a guy like Lou Dort, and when I just look at the way Mark Daigneault coaches that team, schematically, the importance of Dort on that team, he feels like the most irreplaceable defender in that group. But then the on-off stuff doesn't necessarily back it up. But then he's always guarding the opponent's best player. I don't know. It feels like it should go to a Thunder player, and I just don't know which Thunder player it should go to. Is my point. So if you go past that, you look at the Rockets, like Asar Thompson. Are we ready to give it to him, or the Clippers, number 3 in defensive rating? Are we ready to give it to Chris Dunn? Like, I don't know that there's a better on-ball defender in the league than Chris Dunn.
He's great. But
then you look at what Amen Thompson is doing in Houston, and he had a block the other day where he missed the layup and then ended up getting the chase down block.
He's unbelievable. I mean, he's unbelievable. We put him on that All-Star team. You get like unbelievable.
And in that same game, had another where he started on one end of the court and ended up getting a steal, like in the paint on the other end. Like, what he's doing athletically is crazy. And then his brother Asar Thompson is doing equally crazy stuff right now in Detroit. So I don't know. My point is, I think Dyson Daniels might be the first player in like 30 years to average 3 steals per game. Like, is he? But you can't give it to a Hawks player because defensively they stink as a team. But could you? I don't know.
Yeah.
So that is my way of not giving you an answer, Chris. I have no idea.
That's fine. This is the thing. It's the awards races. If you look at them right now, there's a group text I have with some of the guys who do betting content with us. We were talking about 6th man of the year, and it's like Pritchard probably shouldn't be as far ahead as he is. Like, Malik Beasley has like just an outstanding case for that award with how he's shooting and how good that Piston team has been. This is, if you look, even like Rookie of the Year, I'm not going to bet this, but like, so Castle's the favorite at minus 175. I think I would go Jalen Wells as my pick right now, and he's plus 550. And it doesn't.
The disrespect for Jalen Wells is crazy. He should be the Rookie of the Year. And I love Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle was my pick for Rookie of the Year before the season.
Yeah, same.
But it should be Jalen Wells.
Jalen Wells is awesome. He should get that. Defensive Player of the Year, here are the odds. Jaren Jackson's at plus 120. Mobley's at plus 130. Daniels is at plus 700. Dort's at plus 1,200. SGA is at plus 3,500. Amen Thompson plus 5,000. J-Dub plus 5,000. Zubac plus 5,000. Draymond at plus 8,000. That's like the front list on BetMGM. To me, Mobley is the pick. That's its defense that struggled to start the year, was not at the normal Cavs high level, but has rebounded. It is now solidified at top 10, and I think Mobley is at the heart of that. He anchors with switching. Positionally, he's outstanding. He's blocking shots. He's getting steals. He's generating points on transition. He's better as a rebounder this year and ending possessions, which to me like factors into this. And on the fringes, but it factors into this. And I think if we're just like gaming this out a little bit, this shouldn't be how this works. But I think all the good teams are going to get represented in the awards this year. SGA is going to get MVP. I think Atkinson will probably get Coach of the Year, although Bickerstaff, I think, has a really good case for it as well. The Cavs are just better. Mobley getting Defensive Player of the Year, when I also thought he should have won it 2 years ago. I thought he was that good then with Jaren. I think he would be the deserving winner to me. If I was picking right now, again, I'm a little bit biased. I watch the team a lot more.
No, I mean, look, if
he's really damn good.
He is. If Mobley gets it, nobody can complain. He's an awesome defender. There's no question about it.
what he's also just like what he's going to be asked to do for this Cavs team to reach its ceiling. I think what they're going to throw at him and what they are throwing at him, even with the DeAndre Hunter trade, it's just different than what basically any of these other candidates are being thrown at a team with the stakes. Like, to me, that matters. The stakes of what he's doing on a game-to-game basis in a big picture sense, I don't think I'm overstated. I feel confident enough, Wes, that my unit is $5, so it's not like I'm betting massive amounts of money, but 3 units on Mobley at plus 130 to win Offensive Player of the Year is a thing that I have put out there.
So I had this conversation with Mike Shearer, who does the basketball poetry newsletter, and it's awesome, and people should read it. And he came up with the idea. I don't know if he came up with the idea, but it was the first time I kind of seriously came across it. We should have a perimeter defensive player of the year and an interior defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
And with Wembanyama out, I would give it to Mobley, and I wouldn't think hard about it. I think he's just been the best interior defender in the league. And then I would love to have a perimeter defensive player of the year. And that way we're not doing this thing of why can't a perimeter, because I kind of made the case for a bunch of perimeter defenders. I still think the guy who's 7 feet tends to be better defender than the guy who's 6'3". And I'm sorry that hurts your feelings. Guards, Marcus Smart. I'm sorry that hurts your feelings, Marcus Smart, but it's the case, Marcus Smart. So
did you see Marcus Smart did a kip up the other night after he took a charge?
I did not see that. Good for him. Is the first
I was like,
athletically impressive thing he's done in 2 years.
I just also don't think I've ever seen an NBA player do a kip up. Like, after taking a charge, they kind of like have to get someone to help them up. It's like a whole process, and he just like, I was like, wow, okay, good for you.
Good for him.
All right. There we are with the Spurs and Wemby. But it just sucks to also not see Wemby, frankly. Like, this
yeah,
sucks.
also that the Spurs immediately become unwatchable, right? Like, I don't really care about the De'Aaron Fox. Like, what does De'Aaron Fox look like running pick and roll with Charles Bassey? That's not getting me to, that doesn't get me to tune in.
Yeah.
Are we doing All-Star talk, or are we going to skip it?
Do you want to do All-Star talk?
I will say again, this is not a unique take, but this is my experience, and I think it's just at least worth sharing. Being unplugged the way that I was unplugged, nobody talked about that stupid All-Star game. Nobody talked about that All-Star game.
Everyone talked about Four Nations, dog. Like that was
everybody talked about Four Nations.
Four Nations.
Everybody talked about it. I'll remind you, I was in Colombia, Chris.
Yeah.
Not exactly a hockey town.
Sure, yeah.
Everybody was talking about the Four Nations thing, asking me everybody knows what I do for a job. They asked me what I thought about the hockey thing, not the NBA thing. It's anecdotal, just my experience, but it kind of reflects what I think is sort of the vibe around the All-Star weekend. The NBA, to me, that is such a massive loss for the NBA. The NBA is always trying to punch up. They're always trying to reach Big Brother NFL. The fact that they were dragged down into a conversation in the NHL,
it's tough.
That must have pissed off Adam Silver in the league office. They must have. Are you kidding? The NHL? We're losing to hockey? This is a league that tries to put itself on the same pedestal as the NFL, and they're being dragged down with the NHL. And there's not a bigger loss for the NBA on All-Star Weekend than that.
So you didn't get any like earnest Mac McClung questions in Columbia?
No, nobody cares. They're like, nobody cares that he won. The only thing I got was, Tyler Hero won the 3-point contest. That's pretty cool. Yep.
Yeah. The fixes they're pitching for All-Star Weekend next year, as much as we can call them fixes. Well, let me give you my own. We can talk about these fixes another. They're not that interesting. Here, can I tell you what I would do, Wes? This is what I would do. Mm-hmm. Whether it's move it out of the season, out of the All-Star game, out of the actual NBA regular season, like move it to the summer or something, like pre-finals, whatever. Just it's the Pro Bowl now. Just treat it like the Pro Bowl. Or you like move it on the calendar a little bit. I think you need to move it. You need to create WNBA crossover every year. However, by hook or by crook, you got to find a way to do it. It felt like a big deal that they didn't get Sabrina Curry 2 with Caitlin Clark involved this year, and they apparently tried up until like the Wednesday before, couldn't get it done. I also think the NBA is really messing this up by not having important games on this weekend in February. College football's done, the NFL's done. And this is what you're running in February when you need to get people to really start paying attention. The more I started looking at the calendar and thinking about why they're doing this now, other than it's makes sense in the flow of the season, I think that's very arbitrary. You should be putting Cavs Celtics and Thunder Rockets and Nuggets and Bucks whomever, Bucks Knicks or something. You should be putting these big games and frankly like probably be able to flex games in here and like adjust your schedule to put the biggest games possible this week and make that the weekend as opposed to this thing that no one actually cares about.
I mean, I think there's room for both. I wouldn't move the All-Star break because it's needed as a break.
Yeah.
My-
we should have just then create bye weeks. Like, let's have a bye week. It's okay.
I'm here for bye weeks.
Or
I'm here for
65
more
or
bye weeks. I'm here for
60
breaks. I think the
65
NBA should
games
adopt.
65 games or bye weeks. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think the NBA should adopt one night a week where they have no games.
Yeah.
I think that would be great for just the media atmosphere of it, so we can actually kind of get ahead of things and start talking about the games. I got 100 fixes on that I did a whole episode of Real Jam Radio about for the regular season. So in December. But here's the thing with you mentioned sort of the Caitlin Clark, Steph Curry thing, and how every time the NBA has been trying to, Adam Silver specifically has been trying to tweak and change and fix this All-Star weekend so much that the fixes have become more of a story than the weekend itself. And whether or not the fixes work or not are becoming more of a story itself. The thing that didn't happen became a story, to your point, Chris. The fact that they couldn't get Sabrina versus Steph was a story. And these things kind of overshadow the weekend itself. So here's my advice to Adam Silver. Stop all of doing the things. Stop fixing it. It's not working. You're not good at this. I think Adam Silver is good at negotiating TV deals. I think the league has figured out a lot of things. I think they probably get hit a little bit too hard about not marketing their young stars and things like that. I think the NBA is really good at a lot of things. Figuring out social media, like all that stuff. They're really good at the international expansion. Like they're good at stuff. They are really bad at the All-Star weekend.
What I'm taking away, though, the social media stuff, you being good at. So, Wes, big Mr. Beast guy?
Yeah, I didn't really understand what was happening there. I saw it was on my, like, I was like, I don't know what this is, and I'm frankly not that interested to even bother to find out. But
I just, wanted to check.
But, like, that was stupid. The whole Kevin Hart thing, that was dumb. All of it was bad. The NBA has proven to be really, really bad at doing All-Star Weekend. So my advice to the NBA, stop trying to do it. You're bad at it. Just go back to East versus West, pick your teams, play the dumb game, move it along. Because at this point, when you're trying to fix it, the fact that it doesn't work becomes louder. It becomes the story. Just go back to what it was. Let's get through the weekend. And then to your point, Chris, let's get back to the games that matter. And I don't even think you need to flex or anything like that. Everybody, the Thunder and the Celtics were the preseason favorites to make the finals. Take those preseason favorites, put them on NBC next year, or whatever network you want, and just have that the first game out. Let's go. Boom. We know it. Put the other two teams that are at the top of the Vegas odds. Put those. Boom. Put those guys. Let's just get these games going. But just like quiet the noise. Stop putting. In other words, do less, Adam Silver. Just do less, and people will care less. And I think that's the problem right now, is that people are out, because they're trying to fix it so much, that people are actually caring more about whether or not these fixes are working. The NBA would be fine if people just didn't care about the All-Star Weekend. The NBA would be fine. The NFL is fine. Nobody cares about the Pro Bowl. I don't know what this obsession about needing All-Star Weekend for people to care about it. I don't know why that matters to them so much.
Yeah, I don't get it. The NBA is, I think, oftentimes too self-serious, and this is, I think, one of the best examples we could have. They take themselves far too seriously, and it's kind of ridiculous. All right, last big topic that before we do our Tankathon spin, West, is the Knicks. And are they actually contenders? And I saw them in person Friday in Cleveland, went to that game. They lost to Cleveland on Friday, got the worst loss of the Thibs era. Didn't have Josh Hart for the one, but just got throttled in that game. Lost to Boston again on Sunday. Had a valiant comeback, but could not do it. Two losses to the two best teams these have not beaten any of the best teams in the league this year. Okay? I don't think this team is a contender. This team has a Mitchell Robinson-sized hole, has an Isaiah Hartenstein-sized hole in their roster.
Yep. That's the better way to put it.
The Towns trade was a good thing for them evolving. He has been awesome for them. There's no disputing that. But because you lost Hartenstein, who they did try to keep but just could not compete financially with OKC, And because the center you were left with was Robinson, who is now hurt again, and Lord knows if he's going to play sure, and if he does, like, how can you depend on him? That issue for this roster means I cannot see them beating Cleveland or Boston in the playoffs this year. The Boston loss got more of the attention, and I understand why, because it was like a Sunday ABC game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the Celtics defending champs. The Cavs loss should, in some ways to me, is more alarming, just because if you think about how fast this has turned for them, we are not that far removed from them in this other version of this Knicks team being the team that put the Cavs into Donovan Mitchell panic mode and like just general freak out mode of just getting punked. That team doesn't exist anymore. That version of the Knicks is gone because of how their center position doesn't exist in the same way anymore. They have all these wings. They have all this stuff that is great. They're still going to be a hard out, I think, when the time comes to it, assuming they're not like run into the ground by then. But I don't think this team is beating the best teams in the league, and I think it really, for me, starts with just how absolutely dreadful that center position is, and they just do not have that physical presence inside anymore.
Yeah, I think Towns has been better than expected defensively, but also still not very good defensively, and you can't count on Mitchell Robinson to fix that. Even if he comes back, he'll probably just get hurt again, right? And so I think the Knicks are a really good team. They're just not as good as Boston or Cleveland. And with the Celtics, they've been good all season, but there's still that feeling that they're going to be better than they are right now in the postseason, right? Because we've seen it. They just won the championship. With Cleveland, I think it's still a mystery as to what it looks like in the playoffs. But there's an understanding that we feel like it's probably not going to look exactly the same. For better or worse, it's going to look different in the playoffs with Cleveland. The Knicks are going to look exactly how they look in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because they play every game like it's a playoff game. And a credit to them. Credit to Tibbs. He plays all the starters 40-plus minutes. But they don't have that inherent advantage of when you get into the playoffs, you're just going to be a better team because you're going to play your starters more minutes because they're already doing that. And we kind of already know the bells and whistles and all the buttons and the levers that Tibbs is going to pull, right? Well, we know it. They're built in the Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns pick and roll. Unstoppable, by the way. Mm-hmm. But, OG Anunoby, when he's available, pops off every once in a while. Mikal Bridges pops off every once in a while. Both of them are kind of sidelined a little bit defensively, even though Bridges will still have moments occasionally. And then there's a depth issue, right? Like they're very Miles McBride dependent some nights. And, you mentioned the issues at center. So I think they're a really good team. They're just clearly a notch below Boston and Cleveland. And I think that's okay. I think when they made that move, there was also an understanding that they're not built for this season. Boston is going to take a step back because they're not going to be able to afford this team. So they're going to lose one of these core guys. Al Horford's going to age out. Things are going to happen in Boston over the next 2 or 3 years. And that's when the Knicks can kind of step into that because they're built kind of for who they are. And I think like I said, it's a good team.
Yes.
But once Boston takes that step back, I think the East becomes open, right? I think Boston, Cleveland, these teams will still be good. But then there's just no path through right now. It's just sort of a traffic jam with Boston and Cleveland in the way of the Knicks. But in a couple of years, I think the lanes will open up a little bit and the Knicks will have a chance.
Yeah, Cavs and Knicks, I think, are pretty well suited both going forward. I think both of them are in good, considering ages, considering how they're building their rosters and whatnot.
And Boston is, right? I think Boston's going to be in that mix too.
I mean, Boston's going to have Tatum, and there's going to be some older roster turnover, but you would think, depending on what happens with the ownership sale, that they're still going to spend and still be good. And even if it's the two J's and they have to replace some of the style, you would think they're going to do it well. There's not a lot of the Brad Stevens era that makes me think that won't be the case, right? If I look at the Knicks and what they need, it's center for number one. Achua's good, but he shouldn't be starting for you in the way he has. I think that's been tough. If you're playing him with Towns, I think that becomes tough defensively against some of these teams. He just got brutalized against the Cavs. And the fact that Landry Shamet has now become an 11-minute a game guy for them is just you gotta I understand their roster is expensive at the top with all the guys they have. The next challenge for them is it's frankly a thing all these teams with really extended payrolls are going to have to do. Cleveland's going to have to do it if they can't afford to keep Ty Jerome this summer and whatnot. You have to find guys you're identifying that are either draft guys or undervalued guys in other teams and turn them into something more here. And we just know what Landry Shamet is. That's not a guy that's going to. Cameron Payne, who's played 51 games for them, should not be a 15-minute a game guy for you as your eighth man on your team. It's you have to turn over those 8, 9, 10 spots much better than they have so far this year.
Yeah, and if they time it to where maybe Boston takes a step back, and they spend for one season, and maybe even go over that second apron just for 1 year and just really go for it. Maybe that's an option for them. But I think it's been a big story when you kind of look on the networks and everything where everybody's talking about the Knicks are not real contenders. I think there's some hand-wringing about it. I don't think they were built necessarily to be a contender this year. I think they were built to be a good team this year. That was built for a timeline of probably a four-ish year window, because that's about as long as timelines last in today's NBA. I think they opened up a window. I just don't think the window's open right now. I think it'll be open a year or two from now.
I definitely might have been swayed in this topic, Wes, by there was a lot of Knicks fans at this game on Friday. And all of them that I talked to, like in the seats and then leaving the arena, were apoplectic. They were so
being
pissed.
around Knicks fans can turn you against the Knicks. That is a very easy thing to do.
I'm not even like anti-Knicks. Yeah, I get that. But they were just like so bummed that I was like, should I be taking this more seriously than I am? It was like that. It was like they were just so devastated by how that game went.
Yeah, Knicks fans feel things strongly.
Which, like,
Put
you
it
know
that
what?
way.
We all need to feel healthy emotions sometimes, you know?
Let it out, man.
It's a thing. All right. End on a Tankathon sim, Wes, as we're going to do up until the draft. Doing a lot of draft deep diving, Rafael Barlow's newsletter in particular, and just getting to know some names. Shout out my guy. Here we go, sim. All right. I like this order because I like that so far, Wes, we're getting things that reflect what we've talked about. 2 for 2 on that note. What I don't like is the number 1 pick. We'll go 5-1, though. Jazz dropped down to 5. They deserve to drop down to 5. Yep. They are criminals. The Suns jumped 8 spots. Their pick goes to the Rockets.
Oh, okay. So Houston at 4. All right.
Yeah, Houston at 4. Good for Houston. That might be the Kevin Durant pick.
Devin Booker pick.
Here, talk about it. Devin Booker really mad about Hooters this week.
Yeah, another one of those things where I didn't catch it and didn't feel like I needed to go back and catch up on what that is. Please don't tell me. Please don't explain it.
Yeah,
just tell me who number 3 is.
My dad told me, and I was really mad at my dad. Spurs go up to 3.
They're going to get a good player at 3.
If the Spurs get a really high pick in this draft as a result, and like Wemby comes back healthy, like someone pointed, like if they won the lottery and and they got the David Robinson Duncan like redux, but on steroids because it's 2 really young guys, it's like Wemby and Cooper Flagg, plus De'Aaron Fox and Castle.
I'll root for it. Give me 2 and 1. Tell me who 2 and 1 is, and it'll prove my point.
New Orleans and Washington are 2.
Nobody wants Cooper Flagg in any of those places. Put him in San Antonio with Wembanyama. 100%. I'm rooting for that.
Yeah,
100%. Why not?
Cooper
Flagg in Washington with
sucks.
Jordan Poole? No, thank you.
Marcus Smart doesn't juice you. Bilal Coulibaly.
Charlotte. Ugh.
Hey, Charlotte dropped to 6 here, which is they also.
Oh wait, no. Who's number 2 then?
New Orleans.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just call me a sucker for the big markets. I want Cooper Flagg in San Antonio.
You just want Cooper Flagg to have some breakfast tacos and play with Wemby, you know?
Ooh, breakfast tacos sound good.
They always sound good, Wes. All right, we're going to end there. Just Basketball Show. Wes, back in the fold. Back later this week. We're going to do our 10 most interesting players the rest of the season. 5 each.
I already know number 1. I already know my number 1. Let's go.
I have number 1 written in pen on my notepad, Wes. Very excited. See if we have some overlap. We'll talk about that later this week. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks to BetMGM. Shout out Homage. Shout out eBay. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you later this week.